Disney has announced the advanced screening money for Thursday in the North American market for Rise of Skywalker. $40 million is the figure that they have put out there, a little bit under the $44 million that Deadline reported earlier from their sources. So that's a 12% reduction under what The Last Jedi got. Could have been a lot worse given what happened to Solo. Obviously it isn't great news being under what The Last Jedi actually earned, since The Last Jedi was the first Star Wars trilogy film to actually get less than the previous film in the opening weekend. This film continues that trend. It's going to get less than that film and obviously less than the film before as well. So the decline continues, but 12% probably not as bad as it could have been. One of Deadline's new articles claims that their industry sources say they're looking at a $90 million Friday for the Rise of Skywalker, and as always that includes the Thursday money. So if we take away the $40 million in advance screenings, we get $50 million for Friday. That's pretty much in line on a percentage basis as to what happened to The Last Jedi. And if we extrapolate out what happened to The Last Jedi on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we get a figure of around about $195 million for the North American opening for The Rise of Skywalker, and the Deadline article says they're claiming it'll probably be $190 to $195 million, so pretty much the exact same calculation there. The total international box office for Rise of Skywalker that's been reported so far is just under $100 million, $99,100,000. China is not going great. It wasn't expected to be going great, but it is going far worse than what happened with The Last Jedi. So the Chinese market is absolutely struggling right now. Does look like they're going to get a big fail for the box office in China, but it wasn't really expected to do big things there, but it is going a fair bit worse than expected. These two charts here show exactly what has happened in China so far with The Rise of Skywalker versus The Last Jedi. It did release on a different day to the previous film, so it was released on a Wednesday in China as opposed to the Thursday in which The Last Jedi was released on. So if you look at the left chart just shows what they earned on their first day, second day, third day, and fourth day. The fourth day isn't quite finished in China yet, so that's a partial result, but we can see the first 3 full days absolutely struggling against the first 3 days of The Last Jedi. If we change the chart slightly to the right-hand side chart to actually show what day they earned the money on, see the Rise of Skywalker gets a head start because it essentially started earlier, but it is overtaken quite rapidly by The Last Jedi, so it is completely lackluster right now in China. Again, it wasn't expected to do great things, but it's going even worse than the kind of low figure that The Last Jedi earned. There's a bit of a mixed bag with the reviews so far, where the critics basically don't really like it, and the general audience does like it so far. The Deadline article here reports that Post-Track has said that the Thursday preview audience gave it a 4.5 star rating and a 76% definite recommend. Parents and kids under 12 made up 16% of the audience, and they gave it a 5-star review, which is pretty crazy. And the general audience made up 89% of the crowd. So I think they ask if someone considers himself to be just a general audience or more of a hardcore fan or that kind of question. So it's saying that the majority of people that saw it on the advanced screenings weren't claiming to be hardcore Star Wars fans. I find that a little bit hard to believe. So now that we have an actual figure, we have $40 million for advanced screenings, we can extrapolate it out just using the Last Jedi ratios. And here is a chart showing the Force Awakens first week earnings, the Last Jedi's first week earnings, and a possible projection for what the Rise of Skywalker might be looking at for its first week earnings. If we look at the actual raw numbers here, this is what we can compare it to see if it is in fact going to collapse at the box office from this point, or if it's going to sustain the money from this point here. So just looking at the middle and the right, really, the left-hand side has got The Force Awakens. There's not really any reason to compare it to that. I don't think there's any chance it can recover to compete with The Force Awakens. But in the middle, we have The Last Jedi, and on the right-hand side, we have The Rise of Skywalker, and using the Last Jedi ratios. So the first one to look at here Is it going to get $53 million on the Friday? Or if you add the Friday and Thursday together, will the official figure be $93 million or more or less? If it outperforms $93 million, we're looking at it outperforming what The Last Jedi did in relative terms. Whereas if we get under the $93 million, we might have the first little hint we've got a bit of a collapse on our hands. But what happens on Friday is normally just baked in, and it doesn't matter how good the movie is and what the reviews say. Saturday is really the first one to look at. If it gets around about $55 million, it says 56.8 there, but just to kind of round it down a bit. If it gets about $55 million, then it's in line with what The Last Jedi did, and it's not really under a big collapse, but that's the main one to look at. So the Saturday figure, how much of $55 million is it going to be? But again, Saturday is normally fairly baked in for most movies. They don't really change much according to the reviews. Sunday, that's where we normally get the first idea that there can be trouble ahead for a movie. So we really want to look at the percentage difference change between Saturday and Sunday. Is there a 20% drop, which is in line with what happened for The Last Jedi? Or is there a bigger than 20% drop? If we've got a bigger than 20% drop and we get a very similar Saturday, then we've basically got a bit of a box office collapse on our hands, and it's not going to go very well in the North American market. If it does something more in line with The Force Awakens, you can see it got a 11.3% drop between Saturday and Sunday. That shows that it'll have pretty good legs and it may be able to sustain a very large box office. And if that does happen, it will probably out-earn The Last Jedi in the North American market. So that's really a couple of the figures there we will be looking at as we get more data in. How's it going to go with its total North American box office? Is it going to beat the $600 million mark that The Last Jedi got? Or are we looking at something drastically underneath the $600 million mark? Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.